Lorenzo, thank you so much for coming. First of all, can you please give a little bit of an introduction to yourself and what you do?
Sure. So, buenas tardes. Nice meeting you all. I'm the legal manager for Coinbase for Latin America. So, I've been here for almost 2 years right now, and I've been on crypto for 5 years now. I think that first I started at a big broker dealer, like in the financial market, TradFi. Then I moved to another major crypto, like global crypto exchange. Now here at Coinbase, starting like in Latin America. Coinbase, is the first public like crypto exchange in the US. It was like struggling to fight the regulation and the uncertainty that in the US and with the US regulation. And now in the coming years, with all the change that we had in the world, it's moving like very fast to expand internationally. And Latin America is a very important actually place for Coinbase to be. So I'm based in Brazil, and I've managed most like our license. We have now a license in Argentina. We'll apply for a license in Brazil, also working in all geos of Latin America, and also another license now in Mexico.
Great, thank you. So before we get into the regulatory landscape, can you talk to us a little bit about why regulation is important, why we need it, and how it applies to the crypto industry?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I know all regulatory and policy meetings that I go, I know all the lawyers, as I'm a lawyer, say, yeah, it's important to balance innovation with protection, right? It's that, but I think it's more than that, right? From one aspect, you can think it's about, it's bringing investment to the country, it's bringing certainty. And when we're thinking about Latin America, I know that's the biggest challenge, right? Because things can change in the other day, right? In Brazil right now, I'll also talk about that. We had like a new regulation published last week, which will change the whole environment. But more than protection, legal certainty, I think it's also very important for all of us here. You guys are building the future for crypto. Because if you understand the regulation, you understand the opportunities, right? I was reading a book from the biggest investment bank in Brazil, and one of the guys, which became, a director of UBS, he was a tech guy, and he was famous because, he read all the new regulations, and he knew exactly like what were the breaches and the gaps that he could explore for an investment bank. So I think it's important for everyone, especially for Latin America, right? And when talking about the regulation, I also like to, when I'm explaining to people that are not into crypto, then don't understand. I think that the most important aspect right now is actually being able to divide the four main aspects of crypto regulation. One, I think, is actually the VASP regulation, which is very famous, right? MiCA, the regulation that is being discussed in the US. Something that is, when it's considered, but it's more like residual right now, right? Because crypto is like what is not considered financial regulation, which is the other piece, mostly like the rails, but it's like, for example, a crypto borrow, a crypto land product, is it considered like a financial product? Third box, I would say, is like the security regulation, right? Which we face a huge uncertainty in the US, also still in Latin America. And fourth one is like the DeFi, right? So what exactly are the borders here? This is like the most important thing that regulation should, make clear for the players that are operating in the market, right? Is it like a security, and then security regulation applies? Is it like a financial product? Is it like under a VASP regulation, or is it like still unregulated? Like it's a DeFi product, right? Which you can pretty much cannot regulate because it's like a calculator, is a technology, right? So in Latin America right now, we're in this stage in which we had no regulation, right? But moving to a scenario, we have like AML regulation, and now I think coming to the next stage, which we're seeing in Argentina, will be most like applicable from January 1st, of having a VASP and a comprehensive crypto regulation. In Brazil, also published last week. In other countries, it's still being discussed, but I think there's a lot of new things coming for Latin America, and with that, a whole new change for the market also.
So zooming into Argentina, can you tell us a little bit more about the developments that are coming up and what parts of the regulation are still lacking?
Good. I'll only say good things because the regulator is actually here. No, okay. But yes, I think that comparing, I think that's important to say, right? Comparing Argentina to other geos, I think we have a very good regulation right now. And I can say that because, well, I'm based in Brazil, right? And most of the discussions that I also had with the Brazilian regulator, I was telling them, yes, you need to regulate. We need to have certainty. That's important. But more than certainty, we also need a good regulation, right? Because it doesn't matter if it's certain, but it's bad, right? And you have a regulation, but you won't have a market for that. So you need a regulation that actually is something that, I know, is initial and understands the market and can develop with time. And that's the piece that I think that sometimes regulators are not, maybe doing very well. But it's not the case for Argentina, where you have a very good initial regulation, which touches the main point. It brings certainty for VASPs operating the country. It still allows for a lot of the international operations, right? Because the crypto market right now is an international regulation, right? As an example, the regulator from Brazil, they said, yes, you cannot have actually a remote company because you want to go to your office and see what you're doing. But I don't know, things are not there, right? Things are in our computers. Things are not just not there. That's not how the crypto market operates. So I think that for Argentina, we have a very good initial regulation, right? I think that the market here is developing very well. It's also, I also think about the point of being like a U.S. company and having to explain for my boss and for the executive team. And Argentina has a pretty reasonable one, which is easy to explain. It's a very good thing. But of course, when we think about developments here, I think the main ones will be in the point that are not directly related to crypto, such as, I don't know, how are we bringing our stable cross-border transactions regulated? Are they allowed or not? It's still uncertain. A lot of US companies actually reach to us and they would say, I want to do cross-border payments to Argentina with crypto. Is that allowed? And here's just uncertain, right? Also, related to more corporate things, tax related, like the bureaucracy. I think those are the points that Argentina still need, to work, and it's already doing that. But as a VASP regulation, I think is doing very well. The challenges that I still see for Latin America as a whole, I always say right now are two. I think the main ones, of course, there are a lot, but one is related to capital controls. Right? How are we going to fit crypto into capital controls? In Brazil, that's, again, what they're trying to do. And they're saying, we want to include a border for crypto, right? And if I'm transferring money to you that is in the US, all these transactions are inside the FX market. You need to have an FX license, right? You need to report all those transactions. I don't know. That's not how the market works, again, right? It's not going to work. And in the draft of the public consultation, the regulator said, yes, actually, that's what we want to do because we see a threat here. We see a threat that, people will start using crypto in the daily transactions. What will be our capital, our money sovereignty in the country, right? And second one is how to actually control and avoid capital flight. And the approach that I know we actually discussed with them, I believe is the right one for regulators right now is, you need to understand the market first. You can build your reports, you can understand, you can add a lot of information for VASP to provide. I think that's very interesting. Then you understand the market. But if you forbid things right now, I know people just use unregulated solutions and you lose the purpose of having a whole regulation. Again, in Argentina, you also see a lot of markets that just go offshore, which is the case of crypto. If the regulation is too bad, people just go offshore or play in the gray zone, right? And you lose investments, you lose money for the country, right? So I think that's the main challenge for countries with capital controls, which is the case of Argentina and all of them in Latin America, right? And I'm just afraid that Brazil can be maybe a bad case for expanding those kind of controls for other geos, as the Central Bank of Brazil is also very influent in that piece, I would say. And the second one, I think, is the challenge also here in Argentina where DeFi will be, right? Mika says, yes, you are out of the scope of the regulation if you're a fully decentralized platform. I think here in Argentina, we have the same. And in Brazil, the word decentralized is just not mentioned in the regulation, right? So you guys that are all building things in the decentralized, like building DeFi solutions, I don't know, are you regulated or not, right? What do we do? So those are, and Mika also pushed this problem like to the future, right? Fully decentralized, but didn't define and still being discussed. The US took a better approach towards that with saying, yes, you need to respect like some AML rules, but it's a technology, right? You should not be like a VASP and have like, all custody trading requirements, which make like this business just not possible because it's something new.
Yeah. So as you mentioned earlier, consumers and regular people have large crypto adoption here. What do the private and public sectors need to do, and what regulations do they need to adopt, and how do they need to work together in order for the private sector and institutions to actually adopt crypto?
Thinking about Argentina, and I would say that as lawyers, we always say, yes, we need more regulation, right? We need a law that defines that and a law that defines that. I know that's exactly the case and the solution for all scenarios, but I would say that, yes, it's important that you have good legal definitions. What is a stablecoin? What is like a crypto security? What is, again, what is a blockchain, right? It's good that you have those definitions. In Brazil, you have it in the law. We also have good ones, but it's still unclear in some points. And to bring institutional adoption, I think, and I can do, again, a good comparison between Brazil and Argentina, because in Brazil, there is a huge, I would say, institutional adoption. Because major like banks and payment institutions, they're all included in the regulation. They've been all operating crypto like from the start. So, and this is like driving a lot of cross-border transactions. Of course, there's some arbitrage due to the taxes that are involved in that. But I'll say that allowing all players, especially the huge institutions such as banks, payment institutions, credit institutions to play and to operate in the crypto market is very important because they have the distribution channels, right? And in Brazil, this was very, very important. If you see the stablecoin adoption in the last, 6 months, you see that it's going exponential just because banks are using that, right? And here in Argentina, the regulation actually forbids that in this first stage, which I think is with a good intention, because you can have the problem that you have in Brazil now, because banks have influenced so much the regulation that crypto is also is almost becoming a financial product. Minimum capital can be around 8 million for VASP in Brazil right now, right? So it's with a good intention. But you also need to include those players to participate in the market. I know that regulators probably concerned with prudential risk, capital risk, how that could touch other sectors and influence, and have a negative impact. But you have to create something fair, I believe, and include those players, because I think they're a key for institutional adoption, which is the point that you mentioned.
So earlier you mentioned a few frameworks and you listed a few pros and cons to each of them. Is there any particular jurisdiction that you think Argentina can learn from and use as an example when looking at their own frameworks?
I think that it's a good question. I think that regulation is doing very well in Latin America, for what I can say. So I think that regulators from other countries in Latin America should learn more from Argentina than the opposite. But yes, as I mentioned, I think that corporate tax regulations, right? So in order that, foreign companies can bring money to the country, right? We're building our branch right now in Argentina, and I know it takes a lot of time to, actually incorporate a branch to bring capital here, to get to get your financial statements audited. All those things are more related to the bureaucracy than with crypto regulations themselves. But if I had to say one point for that, I would say is actually including, not as Brazil is trying to do, but in trying to include crypto as part of the FX market right now. There's a big uncertainty in Argentina about how can you bring, how can you do cross-border transactions? Can you bring money? Can you bring stable coins? Can you actually pay for providers outside the country? I'll say that this is the main point, maybe for that you see for Coinbase, and we see our clients asking for that, right? But overall, say that the crypto regulation from Argentina is very, very fair, and I believe will create a great environment for crypto players operating here in the country.
So can you talk a little bit more about Coinbase's experience over the last few years navigating regulation in Latin America, how you guys have worked together with governments, and what the current landscape and frameworks for Coinbase look like now here in Argentina?
Yes. It's a great question. And it's funny because when you're talking about legal certainty, there's always in Latin America, you need to figure out what the law says and how people are operating, right? So as an example, when you got to Brazil, I know we had all those US lawyers operating, and they said, yeah, you cannot have like omnibus accounts in Brazil because, I know, you're doing like a financial activity, but the whole market operates this way, right? Those are the kind of things that we need to solve in Latin America so that it's easier to receive foreign capital. So I think there are main challenges here were especially being able to, Coinbase operates, I think, we're not related to Base in two main areas. One is retail, right, where you used to, and also crypto as a service, or the biggest infrastructure provider for all those banks that I mentioned in Brazil, for example, right? When you see all big banks in Brazil offering crypto, they're using Coinbase solutions for custody, trading, liquidity, all of that. And they want to know exactly how do they fit inside the regulation, right? What is Coinbase doing? What are we doing? How are we presenting this to the regulators? In Brazil and Argentina, you also have very different use cases. In Brazil, people are not interested in doing payments because you have Pix, which is very efficient. People use for day-to-day payments. Here in Argentina, you have, I know people like to have that solution, and we're also building that. So for us, it was trying to adapt this big company as Coinbase, a global company. Before I worked for Binance, also for 2 years, right? It's also, this is the main challenge. You have a huge company that already operates in most of the deals, but you need to bring a local face and a local identity with local rails, with local compliance, and talking to your clients to understand what they actually need, because reality changes from country to country, right? So now with the new regulation in Brazil, I think this will be definitely the biggest challenge. We're working to comply with the requirements from the CNV, but compared with what Brazil is requesting, I think that Argentina will be way better for us.
So what advice do you have for Argentine companies looking to experiment within the space?
To experiment in the crypto space?
The blockchain space.
Yeah. It's a great question. Again, I believe that now that from January 1st, there'll be a whole new regulation, right? And you need to know exactly who you're dealing with and what are those players doing in the market, right? You have a lot of VASP, you have issuers, you have 5 kinds of categories in the regulation. So I think that there should be a whole new period for the country in which I know people need to adapt, they would need to think. And maybe there'll be also more concentration in the market because it's just not easy for players to comply with the regulation. But yes, I've been talking mostly with, again, and I think that something that we need to work from a policy standpoint to have that allowed for banks and financial institutions, as I mentioned, because I see there's a big opportunity to bring a lot of activities onshore. For example, all the partners that we have in Argentina for Coinbase, they're operating from Panama, from all over the world, right? And we should look for a way to bring those business out to Argentina again. But as a lawyer, as a part of the policy team, I would say that yes, you should partner and see what the people are doing and how they're managing with the regulation, right? Otherwise, it's, as Danny mentioned before, you have the counterparty risk and you need to know exactly who you're dealing with.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about the law that's coming in place on January 1st and how it'll affect people here?
Yes. So in Argentina, we had, I think that from 2024, when we first applied for a license here, a regulation that we had to apply for a license with the CNV and then comply with mainly AML requirements, anti-money laundering. And now this year, a new regulation was published with a more comprehensive VASP requirements such as custody, proof of reserves, trading. And also, I think for us, which was the main challenge was now it requires a local presence in the country. And as a global company, you need to think, if you bring a local company to we have a branch of Coinbase in Argentina right now, what are you doing in the country with your local branch, right? Is it responsible for fiat payments? Is it responsible for compliance? Is it responsible for trading, right? And managing what is the local activity that you're rendering and what is still like remains global. You need to be very fair with regulators when you're doing that. I mean, like we have our global order book, which is responsible for the trading of Coinbase, right? And this is how it works. Most of the challenges that we see, for example, with Mika, and I'm also participating in that discussion with Coinbase, that I know regulators think that you have to do everything inside of Argentina, and that's not how crypto works. And again, in this case, there are a lot of reporting. There are reporting requirements, there are custody requirements. We're still beginning to negotiate with fiat providers here on how we're going to adapt to the regulation, because there are, again, safeguarding for both like fiat and crypto, asset segregation. So a lot of aspects there we use, like for that people that deal with VASP requirements are used to. And here in Argentina, we are adapting to comply and also impose like the highest standards to our operations here locally.
To finish off, can you talk a little bit about what your personal favorite framework is that's currently being globally adopted?
Sorry?
Your personal favorite regulation that's being adopted. Any jurisdiction, which one would you emulate and why?
Yeah, I was also the head of, I know, in terms of, I was also leading some efforts from my last exchange to move to El Salvador, which I think was a very interesting one, because of one point that I think that right now remain in the gray area, which is crypto derivatives, right? This is a reality that, in Brazil, volumes are, 10 times higher than spot trading, for example. And there's just a big uncertainty about, how we actually operate in derivatives, right? Is it like a crypto product? Is it a security? In Brazil, they're just forbidden, but it's the biggest volume again. So again, I think that the country loses a huge opportunity to bring those kind of products onshore, because again, it's a reality for the people there. Okay? So I think that in that sense, El Salvador had a good approach toward also including as part of the crypto regulation, the crypto derivatives, and also other financial products involved in that. I think that's a great case. Again, I think that Argentina managed very well this idea of, what are the local operations, what remains like being operated like from offshore, which I really like it. And Brazil, I'm bringing a little bit of each one because I think they all have interesting aspects. But I think that Brazil had also a great point in using stablecoins, although like in the gray area for cross-border payments. Now, right now in Brazil, like most of all the banks are using stablecoins for cross-border payments. That's what we've been discussing here when we say like adapt crypto adoption, just because it's faster, because it's also cheaper in Brazil. So I think that's also a great point that was incorporated as part of the FX market, and now we'll see how it moves. But I also like those three aspects in terms of like more vast one here, like including traditional like products that are in the security area, like El Salvador, and also as part of payments and cross-border in Brazil in the first stage. Now it's changing. So,
okay, great. Thank you so much, Lourenço.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Global Blockchain Lead Paul Brody from EY.